What's going on, everyone? Thanks for checking out this video. Today I'm going to do my best to tell you everything I can about the Cyrusher Ranger bike, one of the new flagship bikes from Cyrusher. And my goal today is not to get too overly technical. You guys can read the tech specs online, but instead I'm going to try to tell you what the ride experience is like on this bike, all the little details I can find and things that came up as I rode, all the stuff you might want to know if you're considering buying the Ranger bike. So let's check it out. All right, today we're going to check out a bike from Cyrusher, and they call this one the Ranger. It's a 26x4 fat tire bike. Current retail price is $27.99, and the bike does come in multiple colors. There's a green, a white, and then the black and red that you see here. Now, I said that I wasn't going to get overly technical, but I am going to give you a 60-second breakdown of all the specs just so you know what we're working with. So rapid fire, let's go. The Ranger bike has Logan hydraulic brakes. It's a dual suspension bike with a double crown suspension fork up front and an adjustable rear shock. It's a 52 volt, 20 amp hour battery pack that's integrated into the frame. Rack and fenders are not included in the purchase price, but they can be purchased on the Cyrusher website aftermarket. The bike has a color display, half twist throttle on your right hand. It also has a 750 watt Bafang rear hub motor, peaks over 1,000 watts. It's a 9-speed bike, 1132 in the rear and 52 tooth up front. The bike is equipped with a torque sensor for pedal assist. The minimum seat height is 35 inches. That's from the ground to top of seat. Standard height is 30 inches. They say this bike's for people 5'7" to 6'6". I would agree with those heights. Top speeds on the bike are 20 miles per hour using just the throttle and 28 plus if you're pedaling. The Ranger bike weighs 90 pounds, has a carrying capacity of 330 pounds, and I did take the battery out and weigh that. The battery was 12 pounds by itself. All right, so now that you're up to speed on all the specs, let's talk a little bit about the ride experience with the bike. First, we can talk about the arrival. Probably one of the best packaged e-bikes I've ever received. The thing was entirely encased in foam. Probably not environmentally friendly, but it did protect the bike very well. No damage from shipping at all. The setup of this bike was pretty straightforward. Just got to put on the pedals and attach the handlebar and the front wheel. Although the front wheel had an interesting setup. It's not a through axle in there. It's not a quick release. There's just two little Allen head bolts that go one on each side, and that's what holds on your front wheel. I didn't have any problems with it. I really rode this bike hard over jumps, down and off, up over curbs and roots, and I mean the front wheel never loosened up. So never seen that style before, but it worked just fine. The brakes are Logan hydraulic brakes. I've had these before. I don't mind these brakes. They work pretty well. I didn't have any issues with them making noise or squealing. It was a nice, smooth, quiet stop. So I was pleased with the braking system on the bike. No issues there. Now the front of the Ranger bike I think looks pretty cool. Cyrusher uses these double crown front forks. They call them their motorcycle inspired front forks. And I think it dresses it up. It makes it look a little bit more serious. I don't notice any difference in performance out of the forks. They feel like any other set of suspension forks. There are a couple drawbacks to it. You can't have your front mounting point here for a front basket, so there's no cargo going on the front. And the other thing is when you fully lock out the steering, you can see that the forks actually come here and hit the side of the frame. That's why they got these rubber stoppers right here. So it does limit your turning radius a little bit. You don't really notice it while you're riding. You notice it more when you're trying to turn the bike around inside your garage. Then you do notice that it's a little bit less of a turning radius. But I think they are cool looking. Cyrusher uses these forks on multiple bikes, and it is one way that they kind of differentiate their look from others. The bike is equipped with a headlight, and there's just one button up here on the handlebars. You can turn your headlight off and on. There's no taillight integrated into the bike though. It's its own separate battery powered taillight under the seat. One button turns it off and on. So you're not getting brake lights when you pull the levers, and when you push the headlight button, you're not getting your taillight on. You got to manually turn it on under here. A rear rack and fenders are not included in the purchase price. You can buy those aftermarket on their website. There's mounting points right here to attach a rear rack if you really wanted to have some cargo capacity on this bike. But that does not come with the bike. You got to buy those extra. Some kind of front fender would be nice to have on here, even if it was just a short fender, something just to keep the water from splashing up in your face when you ride in the rain. I did notice that when I rode it in the rain. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the controls. So you've got a half twist throttle, and it's right next to your trigger shifters right here. A lot of bikes use the big thumb shifter. It kind of looks ugly. I don't like it. I like the trigger ones better. I did not have any issue manipulating the throttle or the shifters while riding, even though they're done with the same hand, close proximity. I didn't really find that to be a problem at all. Now let's show you the button clusters on your left hand here. Power button is underneath, and you can see the display come on. It is a color display, nice, big, clear, easy to read. I like the display a lot. You've got pedal assist up and down. There's some buttons hiding on the side here. So this one appears like your mode key. So it toggles you through max speed, average speed, you know, your trip meters, all that. The second one down here is dims the display. So when you turn your headlights on, the display does not automatically dim. You got to hit that button over here to dim the display. This is your headlight button, and of course the horn's built into the back of the headlight. All right, now I'll do my best to get a camera shot here so you can see the programming settings. Just hold up and down for a couple seconds, takes you into the P settings. P1 just toggles you between miles per hour and kilometers per hour. So if we go to the next setting, P2, 52 volt, so that's your battery setting, you're gonna leave that alone. P3 is your pedal assist levels. You want 0 through 5 or 7 or 9. You can have however many pedal assist levels you want. Next one is your wheel size. It's set at 30 inches, that's probably fine. The next one is your max speed. So I'm gonna go into that. You just hit the mode button. You go in, and I have it set at 72, but you can go up pretty much as high as you want. You can take it all the way to 99. Now, of course, it's not gonna go that fast, but it just basically tells the bike no limit. So I'm just gonna leave it at 99. P6 is for like a password, and P7 just says 05. I'm not sure what the P7 setting is. I don't know what that does. And then you're back to the start. So there's your settings. Pretty simple stuff. You don't even really need a manual to go in there and change anything. But I think the display looks nice on this bike. It almost looks like a little cell phone turned sideways on there. Full color and gives you everything you need, battery life, odometer, and your speed nice and big. Easy to read. I like the look of the screen on this bike. Now, Cyrusher also did provide a set of mirrors with this bike, but I didn't put them on. I didn't really find a way to mount them that I liked. They mount with a rubber strap that goes around the handlebar, and I really couldn't mount it on the end here because my fat hand takes up this entire grip. And to mount them inside here, you're not gonna be able to see around your shoulders really. So I just left them off for now until I find a better way to mount them, or maybe go with a different set of mirrors. I like to use bar end mirrors, but on this particular throttle, the way this mounts, there's a little, inside that hole, there's a little Allen head bolt that you tighten up and loose, and that's what keeps this grip in place. That bolt loosens up this thing that goes inside the handlebar that expands and holds the grip in place. So you can't really cut this off and put a bar end mirror inside there, because that's where the mounting mechanism is for the hand grip. So you're not really gonna put bar end mirrors on this bike, unfortunately. And the last thing I'll mention about the handlebar setup is just take note of this piece here that sticks out kind of far. It stretches you out on the bike a little bit, kind of giving you that aggressive ride position, which I think is what you're gonna want for this style of bike. I like to be a little bit more upright, so I may end up just putting a shorter one of these in here just to bring the handlebars back a little bit closer to me. It might look something like this. There you go, we took out this long handlebar stem, put in a short one, brings the handlebars back to you a couple inches. I went out and grabbed a red one. They come in all different colors, and they're $9 on Amazon. Very easy adjustment to make. Now, another thing to point out about the ride position, this bike's minimum seat height is 35 inches, and it's at minimum seat height right now. So you might be looking at this and saying, well, no, you got another 1.5 inches, 2 inches to put the seat down. Well, you don't actually. The way this bike is configured, so I'm gonna take this out really quick to show you this, if I can release this seat. The suspension right here is kind of in the way of the seat post going down any further. So the seat post tube ends like right there. So when you put this down in there, it only goes to there, leaving this top of the post sticking out a few inches. So if you really wanted to put this seat lower, I mean, you could take a hacksaw out and cut 2 inches off of this post, and that would allow the seat to go down like another 1.5 inches, 2 inches, easy. So you could make the seat a little bit lower, but that's why it doesn't go all the way down. This post hits the inside of the frame right here where the suspension shock is hiding. So just a quick note, if you're a shorter rider and you really like this bike and you want to get that seat down just a little bit lower, that's one way that you could do it. Now, before I get into the rear suspension, I do want to talk about the battery really quick. It's a 52 volt battery. Normally they're 48 in a lot of these bikes. So 52 volt here, and it's a 20 amp hour battery pack. It is integrated in the frame and it slides out the front here by the wheel. I like them better when they slide out the side, but I didn't really have any issue getting in and out. It's just a little bit more cumbersome when the wheel is in the way. And of course, I did a range test on this bike. I know you're probably very curious how far that battery will take you. Here's what I can tell you. Range is completely dependent on a ton of different factors, rider weight and weather and battery cells, and there's a million things that go into it. I weigh 180 pounds. I rode this bike like a maniac. I really, really pushed this thing. I was in pedal assist 5 the entire time, using throttle from a stop on every stop. I really tried to put a hurting on this battery as fast as I could. basically draining it as fast as I possibly can, riding at high speeds, just using as much power as I could. And this bike carried me over 40 miles on a single charge. I thought that was pretty good. I got a clip of the ending that I'll show you a little bit later, but it definitely took me well into the 30s with good power. And then once you get, you know, approaching 40 miles, it's lost a pretty good step. And at the end there, it was still going, but you know, there wasn't really usable power. It was barely carrying me along on level ground. But there you go. That's one piece of data of what I guess your average rider using a ton of pedal assist and riding aggressively, what you can get out of this bike. Cyrusher estimates up to, I think it said like 56 miles or something like that on the website. I would say that's pretty good. Normally they put some ridiculous numbers on the website. That's not bad. I think if I dropped this to pedal assist 1 or 2 and rode it casually, I could probably get there. I think I could hit that number. So I appreciate them being a little bit more realistic with their range estimates. All right, now let's talk suspension. This bike does have a rear suspension. It's a D&M air shock in there. And I gotta say, great suspension. It's so much better than a suspension seat post. If you've never ridden a full suspension bike, it is a different feeling. It is much softer. This had a lot of travel in it. The way it came set up from Cyrusher, I didn't really monkey with the air settings at all. I did check it. It was set at about, I think, 80 or 90 pounds PSI. And I just left it there. Had really good spring in it. I am absolutely not a suspension expert at all. It felt fine for me. It felt really soft and soaked up everything, and that's how I like it. So I just left it there. Now it's a D&M shock, and there's a couple adjustments on it. So the first thing here, this little red cap, if you undo this is where the air inlet is, where you can change the air pressure in the shock. The blue lever is a lockout. So it's unlocked there and free to spring. And if you flip it this way, it locks out the shock. I've never seen that. I don't know why you need a rear suspension lock. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. Again, not a suspension guru at all. And there's one more setting that's just on the other side. Do my best to show you. It's a little dial on the top. It's probably not going to come through on camera, but underneath here, there's a little dial you spin, and that, I think, sets the rebound of the shock. So you got a lot of adjustments there to play with. It's probably one of the better shocks I've seen on a bike. I've had other rear suspension bikes that came with shocks that were really stiff and tight, and I couldn't even spring the things, and I ended up buying a D&M shock aftermarket to put on there. So the fact that you get this nice shock from the get-go, I think it's a big plus. And again, it just makes the ride quality so nice. You can jump up and down on this thing. It had a lot of spring to it. You know, if you're going up and down over curbs, or you're just blazing through a wide open field, it's just eating up all the bumps for you. I spent a good amount of time testing out the suspension on this bike, taking it off of little jumps, because I want to test the suspension and also test if those front fork bolts were going to loosen up at all, which they didn't. But I really do think this would make a great light trail bike. You know, if you've got dirt bike trails or fire roads, forestry roads, it's going to do great on stuff like that. I did push it a little bit and take it down a power line where there's kind of no path, and just tried to push it a little bit. It came out unscathed, but trying to do what I did on this bike with a bike with no suspension, it's gonna be awful ride. So I guess that's a whole lot on the suspension, but it was really nice suspension. Now the Ranger bike's also equipped with a torque sensor, which I've been liking better than the cadence sensors. It's located in here. It's part of your bottom bracket. So it is a much more complex system. And instead of just keeping track of when the pedals are turning, it's keeping track of how much force you're putting on the pedals. So that's what I've got to tell you about torque sensors. They require you to input force into the pedals. You can't just turn them and ghost pedal and get power. You got to put some force into the pedals to get that to activate. And I will say that I do get more of a workout riding the torque sensor bikes. You've got to put some force into that. Now the torque sensor was way more responsive than the throttle. The throttle was very, very tame. It's a slow takeoff. It doesn't seem to have as much power behind the throttle. The pedal assist just so much more powerful on pedal assist. If you're looking to accelerate fast or get a burst of power, you're going to get it out of the pedals. You're not going to get it out of the throttle, really. In fact, if you're going down the road at let's say 25 miles an hour, and you try to get a burst of power and you hit the throttle, it actually cuts the power. It kills the power, because this is only allowing 20 miles per hour. That's all you can do in the throttle. So if you're going faster than 20 pedaling and you hit the throttle, it actually kills the power, which I found kind of interesting. It overrides your pedal assist. For the gearing on the Ranger, up front you've got a 52 tooth chainring, which is huge. I noticed it the second I pulled this bike out of the box. It's like, wow, that's a big front chainring. and it's a 9-speed bike. So you've got 11 through 32 in the back, which from riding it, what I can tell you is that it just feels like overkill, really. It's a lot of pedal feel at all times in this bike. I went out and I ran this bike up to 28 miles an hour and put it in 9th gear, and you're barely turning the pedals. I mean, there's so much feeling in the pedals. You never ever ghost pedal on this bike, not even close. I think when I did my top speed run, I only had it in 8th gear because I didn't need to go to 9th. They probably could have got away with just making this a 7-speed bike, because really this kind of just feels like overkill. And last but not least, hiding in the back wheel is your Bafang geared hub motor, 750 watt. And they say on the website, I think they have a 25 amp controller. So this is going to be peaking, well over 1,000 watts. Looking at the casing on this, I'm going to say it's probably the G062 motor, for those of you that know what that means. The bike seemed to have plenty of power. Like I said, it was way stronger with the pedal assist than with the throttle. And I did take some performance footage, so I'll show you that now. All right, let's see what kind of top speed we can get out of the Ranger bike. I'm in gear 7 right now. And I'm in the highest level pedal assist. We got 9 gears to work with, so let's get up to speed. Okay. 8th gear. 32 on the bike and 30 on GPS. I still have enough pedal. I don't even need 9th gear. Tons of pedal, and I got another gear to go. I don't even need 9th gear. 30 easily. All right, we made it over to the hill climb testing area. I test all the bikes right here on the same hill. This is a 750 watt e-bike. The fastest 750 bikes that I've been on have climbed this at 22 seconds flat. Given how the throttle feels, the gradual takeoff, and it doesn't feel as strong as pedal assist, I don't think we're gonna hit that mark. It's not gonna be the fastest. I think it'll make it no problem, but not gonna be a record holder, I don't think. Let's find out. 3, 2, 1, go. It's got a very gradual takeoff on it. Doing all right, up to 11 miles an hour. Holding steady right there at 11. And then it gets a little steeper right here. No assistance from me, just throttle only up these hills. And time. I wasn't the slowest, it certainly wasn't the fastest, but again, no problem. All throttle, nothing from me. So did it pretty easily. But I definitely think this bike would make a great bike for stuff like this. Trails through the woods that, they're stone or cinder. It's not blacktop, not completely maintained. There's some mud. There's some things on the trail you gotta run over. You get to sections like this where there's just, look at all these roots popping through. But you don't even have to stand up off the seat because the fat tires and the suspension, the rear suspension, just soak up everything. It's such a nice ride. You can just bulldoze over these things and not feel anything. If you're looking for comfort on something like this, you gotta go with the full suspension. Look at these roots right here. Didn't feel it. Now there is one other feature of the Cyrusher Ranger that is worthy of a brief discussion, and that is that this bike is equipped with a torque sensor. A lot of bikes are going to torque sensor for pedal assist instead of cadence, and I'm gonna explain it as quick as I can. You ready? The cadence sensor, when you got a bike with a cadence sensor, the power from pedal assist is activated by rotating the pedals. On a torque sensor like this bike, the power from pedal assist is activated by pressure on the pedals. So I can ride this bike in pedal assist 5 right now, the highest level, and we're going 6 miles an hour, and I can spin the pedals, nothing happens, because I'm not pushing on the pedals. If I push on them, then the bike takes right off. So there's your main difference. There's a lot of benefits to torque sensor. I like it better. You can ride at lower speeds at high levels of pedal assist. You can also, if I need to do a U-turn and I go to spin this bike around, I accidentally rotate the pedals, it doesn't matter because I didn't really push on them. On a cadence sensor bike, as soon as you rotate those pedals, the power kicks in like crazy. It could really throw you off balance in a low speed turn. You gotta be careful doing low speed turns on the cadence sensor bikes. I find myself hitting the buttons for pedal assist a lot less. I just put it in pedal assist 5, highest level, and just ride it however I want normally, because you only get the power when you start pushing. But some other benefits are, just makes you feel a little bit more connected to the bike because you're getting power based on how hard you're pushing. And if you're riding with someone else, it's a lot easier to match their speed when you have a torque sensor. Now there is a drawback to the torque sensor though, and that is if you're a person who doesn't want to push on the pedals or physically cannot push on the pedals, torque sensor is not going to work for you because you won't be able to get that power out of it. You have to put forth some force on the pedals to activate the power. So if you just want to ghost pedal and have the bike do all the work, you can't do that with a torque sensor bike. All right, we made it to the tail end of our range test. Hopefully you can see that. I'm at 40.6 miles. It says 8% battery remaining. I gotta tell you, I'm pretty impressed because I rode the heck out of this bike. I tried to burn through it basically as fast as I could. Pedal assist 5 the entire time, throttling from every stop. I really put a hurting on this thing quick, I thought, but 40.5 miles is pretty darn impressive out of this 20 amp hour battery pack. I'll show you what it's got left at this point, but it's kind of out of usable power. It's still under, operating under its own power, but if you're down this low, you better be in your neighborhood on the way home. Here's throttle only. Still takes off from a start. Normally it would go 20 miles an hour on the throttle, but as you can see, it's taken a long time to get up to speed. We're at 13 miles an hour, 14, got a little bit of a downhill now, so it'll get up to the 20. You could get yourself home with this much battery, but any kind of hill is just, it's going to be all you. It'll be all you pedaling up that hill. So this is where I'm going to call it, just over 40 miles, like 40.8 now. That's pretty darn good. Now Cyrusher does have an instructional video showing how to disconnect the speed limiter cable on their bikes. So I opened up the Ranger. I was going to disconnect it, but what I found was mine was already unplugged. It's that red wire right there. The speed limiter was already unplugged, so the entire time I was riding this bike, it was already operating at its maximum potential. All right, everyone, I hope you found those clips helpful. If you are considering the Cyrusher Ranger bike, I'll give you my quick summary on the bike. Power department, good power. Much better power out of the pedal assist than the throttle though. I wish the throttle had a little bit more behind it, but decent power. The suspension was great. Soaked up everything I needed it to. No complaints about the suspension. Awesome. Battery life, pretty good. I mean, I got a decent range out of this bike, 40 miles out of one charge. For someone that rides 20 miles at a time at the most, that's a good range. I love the looks of the bike. Love the graphics package and the colors. I like the double crown front forks the bike has. I think it dresses it up some. If there was something I would change about the looks though, there's probably two things. Number one, I'd put like a shorty fender on the front here just to protect from splash getting up in your face. Give it a short fender, and then I would make the paint a gloss. Right now it's kind of it's not a flat color. It's like a semi-gloss, I guess. It's not a bright glossy. I think that would make the bike pop even more if it was a gloss paint job on it. It's a pretty tall bike, 35-inch minimum seat height, so you gotta be probably 5'7" to ride this thing, and it's also heavy. It's a 90-pound e-bike. Keep that in mind, can you lift 90 pounds? But I think that's all my notes for you, so hopefully I was able to answer some questions or maybe tell you some insightful things about the Ranger bike from Cyrusher. If you like content like this, found it helpful, entertaining, do me a favor, hit subscribe. Thank you to Cyrusher for providing this bike for review and testing. And if I missed something, put it in the comments. I'll do my best to answer if I can. That's all. Thanks.